Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are not just stepping out of the comfort zone.
No.
We are taking a full-on swan dive into the void.
Yeah.
We are exploring this shadowy, often terrifying, and deeply misunderstood corner of spiritual practice.
A corner that usually makes polite society, run in the opposite direction.
It really does.
It's true. We're tackling a subject today that is probably responsible for more confusion, more fear, and just more sensationalism than almost any other topic in the spiritual world.
We are talking about Tantra.
Tantra.
And before we even get started, I want to do a quick word association. If I say Tantra to the average person on the street,
Yeah.
what is the first thing that pops into their head?
For the vast majority of the Western world, it's one word.
Sex.
Sex, it's sting, it's, the famous 7-hour orgasm story.
All right.
It's sacred sexuality workshops in California. I mean, the term has been almost completely monopolized by this neo-tantra movement.
And what even is that?
To be blunt, it's often just sexual wellness and, relationship coaching wrapped in very exotic, very Eastern branding.
Exactly. It's incense and intimacy. But here's the thing. If you dig past that glossy, that very commodified layer, you hit a second wall.
A much older wall.
A much older, much harder, and frankly, a much scarier wall.
Yeah.
The wall that says Tantra is black magic. It's sorcery. It involves blood, skulls, cremation grounds, and talking to demons.
And that's the dichotomy, isn't it? It is either love and light in the bedroom, or it's terrifying dark occultism in the basement. There's very little middle ground in the public imagination.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We've got a source that is going to completely dismantle both of those ideas. We're analyzing a transcript and a profile from a very specific, very unique individual.
Okay.
The video transcript we're working from, it has one of my favorite auto-generated titles of all time. You ready for this?
I am.
Is Tundra part of satanic rituals?
Tundra.
Tundra,
Yes.
As in the frozen Arctic biome. The frozen Arctic biome. Permafrost. Caribou. The works.
I'm assuming that's a typo for Tantra.
It is a magnificent typo. I honestly love the idea of a moral panic over permafrost.
Satanic rituals involving caribou. I mean, there's a deep dive in that for another day.
There absolutely is. But yes, the actual topic is Tantra part of satanic rituals? And honestly, the question is valid.
It is.
If you walk into a traditional tantric temple in parts of India, and you see a statue of a woman wearing a necklace of severed heads, holding a dripping sword, standing on a corpse.
Satanic is a pretty reasonable guess for the uninitiated observer.
Yeah, it's a fair first draft of what you're seeing.
It certainly violates the peaceful, Lululemon yoga aesthetic we are used to in the West.
Totally.
You don't see statues of decapitated goddesses at your local Pilates studio.
Not yet, anyway. So, to guide us through this, we are leaning on the insights of a fascinating figure. His name is Osman. He's also known as the blind Muslim yogi.
And unique is really an understatement here. I think we need to set the stage for who this guide is, because his background gives an incredible amount of weight to what we're about to discuss.
I agree.
This isn't a theoretical academic, reading dusty books in a library. Osman is a bioenergy healer who claims to operate on a master level.
He describes his work as involving telepathic healing capabilities. And he grounds it in the principles of quantum entanglement.
Right. And his specialty is critical care, recovery, and terminal illnesses. We're not talking about, minor aches and pains here.
No, this is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And he has been practicing this as well as yoga and meditation at an advanced level for 50 years.
50 years. That's half a century of deep, deep work. It's like what you hear from some of the great masters Yogananda talks about in Autobiography of a Yogi, this lifetime of dedication.
Exactly. And Osman claims to have attained his first samadhi, which is that state of, intense spiritual absorption or super consciousness at the age of 19.
19. Which is remarkable. And I think what makes him the perfect guide for this specific deep dive is his syncretism. He's not just from one tradition. He has studied extensively across the whole spectrum, the Far East, the Middle East, the West, and he explicitly incorporates what he calls scientific schools of thought. He isn't stuck in one dogma. He's trying to map the universal mechanics of energy.
It's like he's trying to find the source code.
That's a great way to put it. The source code of reality. You hear echoes of this in, say, Deepak Chopra's work, trying to bridge that gap between ancient wisdom and modern physics.
So our mission today is to answer that core question. Is Tantra satanic?
But to answer it, we have to follow Osman down a rabbit hole that includes, well, demon politics.
Which is a phrase I never thought I'd say.
The physiology of the soul and why those scary goddesses with the axes are actually the most important tools in the spiritual toolkit.
It's a journey, as he puts it, from the lower worlds to the higher worlds, and it forces us to completely rethink the geography of the human spirit.
A total remapping.
So let's start with the accusation. Osman doesn't dodge it. He addresses the elephant in the room immediately. The visuals.
He admits it right off the bat. Tantra looks scary. He doesn't try to gaslight you into thinking it looks peaceful or, serene.
Oh.
He points out that if you look at the Devis, the goddesses, or the Mahavidyas, which are the great wisdom goddesses, they aren't depicted sitting on fluffy clouds, playing harps, or holding flowers.
No. They are holding weapons.
Axes, swords, tridents, severed heads. I mean, the whole 9 yards.
The iconography is intense. When you look at a deity like Kali, it is objectively terrifying.
Absolutely. She has her tongue out. She's wearing human arms as a skirt. She's garlanded with skulls. Osman mentions that historically, during the British occupation of India, the colonial powers explicitly labeled these practices as satanic.
Which, if you think about it from their perspective, it makes a certain kind of sense.
Of course.
You have these Victorian British officers coming from a very sanitized, orderly, repressed Protestant background. They walk into a temple, they see a goddess drinking blood, and they just go.
Well, that's the devil.
Wrap it up, boys. We found Satan.
Exactly. It violated every single Victorian sensibility of what religion should look like. Religion, to that colonial mindset, was supposed to be polite and hierarchical and clean.
Right.
And Tantra is raw. It's visceral, intense, chaotic. It's about confronting the messy, powerful energies of life directly.
And Osman even brings up the history of sacrifice.
He does. He doesn't hide it. He mentions that, yes, animal sacrifice is part of the history in some traditions. And in some very specific older lineages, he specifically mentions the 64 yoginis, there were accounts of decapitating dead bodies.
Okay, let's pause on that. Decapitating dead bodies, that's extreme.
It's incredibly extreme. And according to the traditions he cites, this was done with the permission of the family, usually for specific rituals involving the skull as a vessel for energy.
See, this is where the satanic label sticks, though. Permission or not, if you tell me a ritual involves decapitating a corpse, my modern brain, and probably most listeners' brains, immediately puts that in the evil bucket.
It triggers a primal wrongness alarm.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So how does Osman defend that? How does he reframe something that sounds so macabre?
This is where he introduces what I'm going to call the scary spoon logic.
The what? The scary spoon?
The scary spoon. He poses this rhetorical question in his analysis. He says, if it looks like a scary spoon and acts like a scary spoon, is it a scary spoon?
I mean, my gut says yes. If I see a spoon made of bones, I'm calling it a scary spoon.
But his points about function versus aesthetics, a scary spoon is still a spoon. Its function is to hold liquid, to deliver nourishment.
Okay.
He argues that we are judging these practices based on our fear and our visual conditioning, the aesthetics of the spoon, rather than understanding the location and the intent of the energy.
What the spoon is feeding you.
Exactly. And to understand why Tantra isn't satanic, according to him, you have to understand his cosmology. You have to understand where he believes these entities actually live.
Okay, so let's map this out. Because I think we often view the spirit world as just here and there, heaven and hell. But Osman has a very specific, a very detailed geography.
He really does. He divides existence into 3 distinct tiers. First, you have the middle world.
That's us.
That's us. The human plane, the physical reality we navigate every day, waking up, going to work, paying bills.
Okay. Middle Earth. Got it.
Then you have the lower worlds.
The basement?
The sub-basement, maybe the sub-sub-basement. This is the realm of what we would colloquially call demons.
Right.
In Hindu terminology, these are the Bhutas, Pisachas, Rakshasas, and Asuras, different classes of beings.
And Osman is saying these are real entities. They're not just like metaphors for my bad mood or my inner demons.
He insists they are very real. And this is where his perspective gets fascinatingly. I can only describe it as bureaucratic.
Bureaucratic.
He doesn't describe them as just mindless monsters or chaotic evil clouds floating around waiting to, boo someone.
Right.
He describes them as intelligent entities with their own civilizations.
Civilizations. Like they have cities. Infrastructure.
Yes. He says they have communities, they have social structures, they have political problems, they have wars, they have leaders and hierarchies.
Wait, so there are demon elections, demon foreign policy debates.
Essentially, yes. He frames them as just an alternative form of intelligent life. They have high power, they are intelligent, and just like humans fight over borders and resources, these entities have their own conflicts.
That's a wild concept. It reminds me a bit of what you hear sometimes on shows like Joe Rogan, when he has guests like Grant Hancock on, talking about these other intelligent species or dimensions that might coexist with us.
It's very much in that vein, and Osman claims he knows this because, as a healer dealing with what he calls possession or spiritual curses, he says he actually visits these lower worlds.
He visits them. Like a spiritual diplomat.
Exactly like a negotiator. He says that when he treats someone who has, in his words, angered a lower entity, he has to lower his consciousness, literally drop his frequency, to enter these lower portals and bargain for the removal of the curse.
That is just a wild image. The idea that a healer has to go down into the demon basement and say, look, I know you're mad at Steve because he messed with a ritual he shouldn't have, but we need to work something out. What do you want in exchange?
It completely reframes the concept of exorcism. It's not just shouting the power of Christ compels you.
No.
It's understanding the politics of the entity affecting the patient. It implies a kind of legal system, or at least a set of protocols for the spirit world. You have to know who you're talking to.
Okay, but here is the absolute crucial distinction for our topic today.
Yeah.
Does Tantra live in the basement?
No. And Osman is adamant about this. He is incredibly clear. Tantra does not exist in the lower worlds.
So the scary goddesses with the axes aren't hanging out with the rakshasas down there?
No, not at all. Osman places Tantra firmly, unequivocally, in the higher worlds.
The penthouse.
The penthouse, the heavenly realms. He says that when you engage with the Mahavidyas or the Devas of Tantra, you are connecting with the heavenly or higher planetary systems. You are raising your consciousness, not lowering it.
So despite the blood and the skulls, the address is in a good neighborhood.
The address is in the best neighborhood. And this is his core argument against the satanic label. He defines satanic as any practice that engages with those lower world entities, the ghosts and demons that he says reside below the root chakra. Tantra, by its very definition and its mechanics, pulls the energy up. It is transcendental.
Okay, I see the distinction now. It's all about the vector of the energy.
Exactly.
It's like just because the bouncer at an exclusive club looks scary, maybe he's got a scar and a mean look, doesn't mean it's a bad club.
That's a great analogy.
He's there to keep the bad stuff out. He's there to protect the space.
That's a perfect analogy. The ferocity of the deity is a protective mechanism, not an aggressive one. The axe is for cutting your bonds, not for hurting you.
And this leads us perfectly into the technical core of Osman's deep dive. Because these goddesses aren't just floating around in some abstract heaven. Osman explains that Tantra is actually a physiological map.
Yes. This was the biggest aha moment for me in the whole transcript. This is where it all clicked. We need to stop thinking of these goddesses as myths and start thinking of them as parts of our own anatomy.
The physiology of the soul.
That's what it is. It's a user's manual for the human energy body. Osman breaks down the chakra system and assigns a specific tantric goddess, a Mahavidya, to each energy center. And this transforms worship into biohacking, if you will.
Let's walk through this, because this is where all the scary stuff starts to make a kind of radical scientific sense. If we can map the monster to a muscle or a goddess to a gland, it becomes science. He starts at the bottom, right? The root chakra.
The Muladhara, yes. The foundation. Osman associates this with the goddess Kamalatmika. She is often depicted as beautiful, seated on a lotus, bestowing wealth and prosperity.
So grounding.
Grounding, stability, the earth element. This is survival, the right to exist, the foundation of your entire being. Very gentle, very foundational.
Okay, moving up. The sacral chakra. Svadhisthana.
He associates this with Matangi, and Matangi is interesting. She's considered an outcast goddess. She's associated with creative expression, with music, with the spoken word, but also with pollution, with things outside the bounds of polite society.
So she's the wild creativity.
She's the untamed creative flow, the raw energy of emotion, sexuality, art, the stuff that can't be put in a box. It's that messy, powerful, creative drive.
Got it. Then the solar plexus, Manipura. Power center.
Bagalamukhi. Now, this is where the imagery gets a little more intense. In mythology, Bagalamukhi is often associated with paralyzing enemies or silencing opposition. She is known as the paralyzer.
The paralyzer.
Yes. The classic image is of her holding a club and grabbing the tongue of a demon to stop his speech.
That sounds pretty aggressive.
It does, but apply it to the physiology of the soul, like Osman says. This is the center of will. of power, of digestion, both physical and mental. What does your will need to do? It needs to arrest chaos. It needs to stop your internal enemies.
So if I'm procrastinating, or if I have that voice of self-doubt in my head, Bagalamukhi is the energy that paralyzes that doubt, that grabs its tongue.
Exactly. She silences the internal opposition so you can act. She's the stop button on the noise of the lower self that keeps you from your power. It's not about hurting an external foe. It's about mastering your internal state.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It's a tool. Moving up to the heart. Anahata.
Dhumavati.
Dhumavati.
Now, Dhumavati is visually one of the most challenging deities in the entire pantheon. She is often depicted as an old, ugly widow. She's wearing dirty rags, she's hungry, she's thirsty, and sometimes she's shown riding a crow or a horseless chariot.
A widow. That seems incredibly depressing for the heart chakra.
It does.
Usually we think of the heart as green light and roses and expansive love. Why would you put a grieving widow in the center of love?
It seems so counterintuitive, but think about the real depth of the heart. What is the heart capable of holding? Dhumavati represents the void, the smoke, the letting go. She represents what remains after everything else is gone. She is the great void.
So she's the grief, the loss.
She's the capacity to hold grief and loss. You cannot have a fully open, compassionate heart if you deny the existence of suffering or loss or the void. If your heart only accepts the happy stuff, it's a shallow heart.
Wow.
Dhumavati represents the spiritual maturity to look directly at loss and see the divine in it. She is the smoke that rises from the funeral pyre of the ego. It's a heavy, profound energy, but it speaks to the depth of true compassion.
That's really profound. It's not the Valentine's Day heart.
Not at all.
It's the deep suffering heart, the heart that has been broken and is healed and is stronger for it.
Exactly. The resilience of the spirit. And this brings us to the throat chakra, Vishuddha. And this is the one that really, really stands out, Chinnamasta.
Yes. The goddess who cuts off her own head.
The self-decapitating goddess.
Yeah.
Correct.
So previously, I would look at a picture of a woman holding her own severed head in one hand, while 3 jets of blood spurt from her neck, one feeding her own mouth and the other 2 feeding her attendants. And I would think, okay, that's a horror movie. That is pure gore.
A reasonable reaction.
But Osman links this directly to the throat, the center of communication. Why?
Think about what the throat center really represents. It's communication, truth, expression. It's the bridge between the heart and the mind. But what is the biggest blocker of pure truth? What stops us from expressing pure consciousness?
My ego, my overthinking brain, my internal filter that's always worried about what people will think.
Exactly. The mind, the intellect, the head. Osman suggests, and this is a core tenet of advanced Tantra, that Chinnamasta represents the severing of the mind. You have to cut off the ego, the constant chatter of the intellect, to allow the pure energy from the heart to ascend to the higher centers.
So it's not violence for the sake of violence. It's a metaphor for getting out of your own head.
It is the ultimate metaphor for liberation from the thinking mind. It's the visual representation of a psychological state where the rational mind is silenced so that intuition can speak, and the blood spurting from the neck.
Yeah.
That represents the life force, the prana, that is freed when the constriction of the ego is removed. It's not death, it's a redirection of energy. It feeds the higher consciousness.
That is actually beautiful in a very heavy metal way.
It is.
It completely recontextualizes the gore. She's not killing herself, she's killing her limitations.
Yeah.
She is sacrificing her small self to feed the big self.
Precisely. The imagery is designed to shock the mind into silence, which is exactly what the practice aims to do. If the image scares you, it's because your ego is scared of being cut off.
Okay, that's a huge shift in perspective. Moving up then, the third eye.
Wachna?
Bhairavi. The terrifying one, the warrior goddess. She represents the fire of knowledge, tapas, that burns away all ignorance and illusion. When you finally see the truth, it burns up your illusions.
And that can be a scary process. It can be terrifying. We like our illusions, they're comfortable. Bhairavi is the fierce energy that doesn't care about your comfort, she cares about your liberation.
And then the crown, or the opening to the ethereal.
The Braharandra, the opening at the crown of the head. Osman associates this with Bhuvaneshwari, who is the goddess of infinite space, the queen of the phenomenal world. This is where your individual energy leaves the physical vessel and merges with the entire cosmos. Total expansion.
But he doesn't stop at the body, does he? He talks about levels of consciousness above the physical form.
No, he goes further. This is where we get into the classical states of samadhi. He mentions the Sabhikalpa samadhi, which is union with form, and he links this to Tripura Sundari, or Shodashi, the goddess of divine beauty and harmony.
And then the next level.
Nirvikalpa samadhi, which is formless union. He links this to Tara, the savioress, the one who guides you across the ocean of existence. She is pure compassion.
And finally, the ultimate source, the origin point.
Mahakali, the great time, the great void, the ultimate reality. She is beyond existence and non-existence. She is the darkness from which all light is born, the source of everything.
So if we look at this entire map, from the root to beyond the crown, the argument is that these scary figures are actually keys.
That's it.
They're specific frequencies, or like you said, software programs, or maybe passwords, to unlock these higher states of consciousness.
And that is why Osman defends them so vigorously. He sees them as a technology, a divine science. If you get scared by the user interface, the scary icon on the app, you miss the powerful technology behind it.
And that ties back to his whole mission, right? He calls for a scientific approach to this.
He does. And this brings us back to who Osman is as a practitioner. We touched on it in the beginning, but we really need to dive deeper into his credentials, if you will, because he isn't just reciting old books. He emphasizes again and again that he has spent decades sharpening the sword.
That phrase stuck with me, sharpening the sword. It implies that the healer himself is the instrument, the weapon against disease.
Exactly. He mentions that in certain stages of his life, he was practicing for up to 18 hours a day.
18 hours. I mean, I can barely meditate for 18 minutes without checking my phone or thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch.
It's a level of dedication that is almost impossible for a modern person to comprehend. It reminds me of the stories of Ramakrishna or Vivekananda, these figures who just completely immerse themselves in spiritual practice to the exclusion of everything else.
And even now, today, Osman claims to practice a minimum of 8 to 10 hours a day, just maintaining the edge.
Just sharpening the sword. He says this intensity is why he has such a high success rate with stubborn or terminal illnesses. He views his spiritual capability like a muscle or a battery. You have to constantly charge it to use it. If the battery is dead, the flashlight doesn't work, no matter how much you believe in the concept of light.
So when people pay for his services, they aren't just paying for an hour of his time.
No.
They're paying for the accumulated voltage he has built up over 50 years.
Precisely. And he's very upfront about this. He explicitly states that his treatment and consultation fees are not inexpensive. He acknowledges that they are premium, but he justifies it by the rarity of the skill and the sheer volume of life force he has cultivated.
It's a bit like hiring a top surgeon. You're not paying for the hour of surgery, you're paying for the 30 years of training that allows them to perform it flawlessly.
That's his framing, exactly. The sword has to be sharp to make a clean cut, to remove a disease or an energetic blockage effectively.
But he's also tried to democratize this knowledge, right? He's not just hoarding it all behind a premium paywall.
Right. And this is a key part of his mission. He acknowledges that modern people do not have 18 hours a day. We have jobs, we have kids, we have Netflix, so he has distilled his knowledge into simpler, more accessible methods. He mentions his mission is to encourage a scientific approach with result-based methodologies.
He talks about simplifying very complex protocols.
Yes. For example, he has a 5-minute yoga protocol. He offers extensive advice, direction, and techniques on yoga and meditation through his YouTube channel, The Blind Muslim Yogi, and he says that's a completely free service. He states that he doesn't withhold any information there. You don't have to pay to learn the methods.
Which is pretty generous. It's a model you see with some modern figures, like, say, Andrew Huberman at Huberman Lab.
Exactly.
Huberman gives away all this incredible, dense scientific information for free on his podcast. But then there are other ways to support his work or engage with it.
It's a similar model. Osman is saying, the knowledge is free. But if you want the heavy lifting done for you, if you want me to apply my 50 years of cultivated energy to your problem, that's where the paid service comes in.
And he directs people to his website, yogawellness786.com, for the premium stuff. He offers a Patreon for daily live video lessons, but the big gun is the bioenergy healing.
The direct intervention.
And he mentions something very specific and, frankly, very modern about the pricing, his Starbucks offer.
The telepathy thing is, well, it's a bold claim. He says he can deliver a 10-minute anxiety fix telepathically for $5.
$5.
He literally compares it to the price of a Starbucks coffee. It's this fascinating blend of a deeply mystical claim telepathic healing based on quantum entanglement and modern gig economy pricing.
For the price of a latte, I will telepathically adjust your anxiety levels.
It's brilliant in a way. It completely lowers the barrier to entry. If you're skeptical, $5 is a pretty low risk to test a telepathic healer.
It's an interesting approach,
Yeah.
but he's also very, very careful with his disclaimers.
Very. And this is crucial for our listeners to understand. He explicitly states that his services are complementary to medical fields.
Yeah.
He's not saying stop your chemo and come to me.
Not a replacement.
Never a replacement. He is saying modern medicine treats the body, I treat the energy. He offers his service to enhance whatever is lacking in standard medical treatments to fill in the gaps.
It's a smart, ethical position. It respects the science of the body, while insisting on the science of the soul. He's not creating a false dichotomy.
And frankly, for someone who claims to travel to the lower worlds to negotiate with demon politicians, being grounded in that kind of real-world disclaimer is probably important for his credibility. It shows he understands the physical reality just as well as the metaphysical one.
So let's bring this all back to the listener. We've gone from, is Tantra satanic, to demon politics, to self-decapitating goddesses, to quantum telepathy for the price of a coffee. What is the big takeaway here?
For me, it's about the danger of surface-level judgment. We live in a world that is so quick to label things. That looks scary, so it's evil. That looks weird, so it's wrong.
We swipe left on anything that makes us uncomfortable.
We do. And Osman challenges us to look deeper, to look at the intent and the direction of a practice, not just the packaging.
Right. Just because a practice involves a skull doesn't mean it's bad. It might just mean it's dealing with the reality of death, which is something we all have to face.
Exactly. Tantra, in Osman's view, doesn't shy away from the dark parts of existence: death, blood, fear, loss. It uses them as fuel to get to the light. It's the ultimate spiritual alchemy. It turns the poison into the nectar.
And if you run away from the scary stuff?
You might also be running away from the liberation that's hidden inside it.
And I think that's a lesson that applies way beyond just spirituality. You know, it applies to everything. That difficult conversation you're avoiding, the scary career change you know you need to make.
The brutal workout?
The brutal workout, yeah. Maybe the thing that looks like it's holding an axe is actually the thing that's trying to cut you free.
That is a profound way to put it. The obstacle is the way. The goddess holding the severed head is telling you to lose your mind to find your soul. You know, it's something you hear echoes of in so many different traditions, from Stoicism to Buddhism.
Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to one thing Osman mentioned that I have to admit, it sent a shiver down my spine. It was a small detail he dropped about the direction of the chakras.
What was that?
We talked about the chakras going up, right? From the root to the crown. To the higher worlds, Tantra is the elevator up.
Right.
But he briefly mentioned that there are 7 chakras below the root chakra.
Ah, yes. The portals to the lower worlds. Specifically, in the Vedic traditions, they're called the Tala chakras, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, and so on.
And that is a terrifying thought. We always think of the root chakra as the bottom floor, the foundation. But Osman is saying there's a sub-basement.
There are 7 levels down.
So that leaves me with this final provocative thought for you, the listener. If practices like Tantra and yoga are designed as this conscious technology to elevate us through the upper chakras to the higher worlds,
then what are the practices that take us down?
Exactly. What are the practices or the behaviors that unknowingly open those lower doors? Are we accidentally doing anti-yoga when we engage in certain behaviors?
When we get lost in mindless consumption or rage or addiction?
Are we descending into those lower political realms, the realms of obsession, extreme fear, greed, without even realizing it?
That is something to meditate on, or perhaps something to avoid meditating on, depending on how brave you feel. It suggests that spiritual gravity works both ways. You have to actively climb up, or you might just naturally slide down.
And if you slide down too far, you might have to hire a guy like Osman to come down there and negotiate your release.
And that will probably cost you more than $5.
I would imagine so. If you want to explore the scientific approach to this ancient mysticism, or if you're just curious about that $5 anxiety fix, you can check out Osman's work. His website is yogawellness786.com, and his YouTube channel is The Blind Muslim Yogi.
He is certainly a unique guide in a very complex world, and whether you believe in the demon politics or not, his map of the human psyche is incredibly compelling.
That he is. Thank you for diving deep with us today. Keep your chakras spinning, keep your mind open, and maybe don't be so afraid of the dark. We'll see you next time.